I'm Teisha Bader. Thank you for joining me for a special look at a new limited drama series coming to Peacock, The Tattooist of Auschwitz, based on the book by Heather Morris, inspired by the real-life story of Holocaust survivors Lali and Gita Sokolov. The story jumps back to the past of Lali in Auschwitz in 1942, and then forward to later in life as Lali finds the courage to tell his story.
Mr. Sokolov.
Call me Lali.
You're looking for someone to write your life story.
So this is a love story.
Out! Go! Welcome to Auschwitz. Get up! Get ready!
This is what it was every morning.
The new tattooist. I am now in charge of you.
Tattoo people, it's not something I can do. Every time I open my eyes, I am still there.
You have to find something in your mind. A good thing. You can't get in here.
I found something there. Someone.
Can you be here?
Thinking about that guy.
What guy?
We must keep living, whatever it takes. Love still exists. Even here.
Harvey Keitel plays Lali as an older man, and young Lali is portrayed by Jonah Hauer-King, whom we are so thrilled to have with us today. Jonah, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So, as an actor, how do you begin to step into the shoes of someone like Lali at one of the darkest times in human history?
It felt like a very daunting task and at times possibly insurmountable. I think you want so much to do this story justice, to deal with it respectfully. And I think there's always a weight of responsibility when you're telling a story of a life that has been lived. But particularly in this context, it has its own gravitas and meaning. So, you know, I think it was a process. I think the first thing I did was I got on a plane and I went to Krakow and to Auschwitz, and I think wanted to pay my respects and also have that experience as part of my research and my preparation. And then it was about diving into all the resources that were given to us by our historical and cultural consultant, which spanned all kinds of mediums, documentaries and survivors' accounts. And it finally led me to Lali and his testimony. He gave a number of testimonies during the 90s, and then later when he came to meet Heather Morris, the author, and tell her his story. So I think I felt daunted and overwhelmed, but I tried to channel those feelings into the work.
Can I ask what that visit to Auschwitz was like for you as a human being, as a Jew, as an actor? Just if you can describe what that experience was like.
Yeah, of course. Anyone that's been there will know it's quite difficult to articulate, and I think it makes you feel very. There's a huge weight around it. I had been as a young man, as a 14-year-old, as part of a history trip, and had my own kind of particular experience then. And coming back, I think there are similarities. I think you're just continually struck by the scale and the scope of it, and this kind of, as I say, this dark feeling. But it was different the second time round, because having read the book, having got to know Lali through Heather, I really wanted to see the camp through his eyes. so much of the story is about him and his life there and his routine and the geography of the camp and how he related to it. So I felt like it was important to start to see it through his lens.
And let me just say before I forget, your portrayal is really beautifully moving. It really is so impactful. Talk a bit about the tattooing. I personally never knew that it was Jews who had the horrendous task of having to tattoo their fellow Jews at the camps. What was that experience like for you, just working on those scenes, that concept?
Yeah, it was a terrible thing and a terrible concept that so often people were given so little choice, and any choice they had were really a choice for survival. The scenes themselves and how they were to film, I think it speaks to the series more generally of trying to reenact these things that we know happened and trying to recreate them respectfully was very difficult because you're also trying to manage your own feelings around them. You have your own baggage, your own associations, but you're so clear in your mind that you don't want to make it about you. You know, you might be feeling upset by this, but imagine what it would have been like to actually have been there. So I think trying to bring a level of focus and professionalism to the job felt like it would serve the story best and would honor Lali best. But I think you would have to be completely cold and numb for it not to affect you. And particularly when you're performing across actors and supporting artists who are giving these incredibly committed performances. And of course, we did it safely and in a controlled way. But the tattooing, you know, the people sitting across from you, you would look in their eyes and you'd have to do this. And no matter how many times you told yourself they were okay, they're performing in this exceptional and committed way. And it was hard for your mind and your body not to play tricks on you. So yeah, it was one of many kind of difficult aspects of Lali's existence.
I can imagine. I mentioned in the introduction how, without giving too much away, the series goes back and forth in time, and it does so really quite beautifully. And with Harvey Keitel playing your character's older self, did the two of you work together? Were there discussions of sort of finding those physicalities or moments of commonality, or how did you approach that aspect of it?
Yeah, the reality of our schedule and the way it was structured was that we didn't cross over, which was a great shame. You know, when I was told that I'd be working with Harvey Keitel, I was over the moon. And of course, you know, the reality of the story is that we didn't. Having said that, we were very bonded because we were working from the same source material. You know, Lali's testimony and his account was kind of our platform. And then we both were able to spend a lot of time with Heather Morris and get to know her and get to know Lali through her. And we learned so much about him and who he was and his love and commitment to Gita and the essence of him. And we learned about things that weren't even in the book, and things, of course, that happened in his life afterwards. But what was really important to us is that we had the same essence. So we needed to show his humanity. We needed to show his warmth, his charm, his wit, and his humor. And then at that point, I think we wanted to go our separate ways and allow the two performances to exist in their own right. We were very aware of the fact that we were performing in very different circumstances and recreating a very different context. And we wanted to acknowledge that decades and decades and decades had passed. And so we didn't want to restrict each other too much. And I think that was important, but it was about finding the right line. And we were quite indebted to our director, Tali, to make sure that those were being crafted and that we were finding the right balance.
And I think it really works beautifully. But as you said, it is a very separate experience and yet very, very bonded at the same time, because you have Lali in Auschwitz experiencing this horrific trauma, and you have Lali later in life carrying that trauma, not just for a day, but for decades of his life. And as it is portrayed in the series, carrying it very closely. It's an ever-present thing. And again, it's just really so well done and makes you really think about how Holocaust survivors reconcile with this painful, painful past with survivor's guilt and go on to live a life.
I'm so happy you mentioned it because it was a big part of the series that we felt was important. It's not reflected in the same way in the book, and we really wanted to bring that to life. You know, so often in stories of this time, they have a beginning and a middle and an end, and often the end stops when the camp is liberated or the war is over. And as we know, it doesn't work like that. And these are experiences that you carry through forever. They're emotional scars, there are physical scars, and they're trying to reconcile what they went through for many, many decades. And I was so happy that the decision was made to show Lali at his late stage, because it shows that this trauma lives on. It's carried through a lifetime. It's passed on to the next generation and the next generation. It's not left behind. And that was, a decision that was made, I think, quite early in the process that we wanted to show that.
And the essence or the core of the film really is this beautiful love story, even though it takes place in this horrible time, in this horrible locale. There is this deep, beautiful love story that you get to tell.
Yeah, and it's what drew me in, I think, in the first instance. I was so inspired by their love and their commitment to one another when I read the book in the first place. It seems so implausible. And it seems so surprising that anyone would be able to have the capacity to have love or give love in a place like this. But I think we've talked a lot about it, and I think what we all felt was that actually, to some degree, it's a choice. It's a choice to allow that love to be given to you, and it kind of serves as an act of defiance. It's a very brave thing to do, and kind of works in opposition to everything else that was going on around them, trying to take away their identity, try to dehumanize them, trying to take their lives away. And for them to be able to find that moment of connection between them is really inspiring. And we wanted to make sure that it was dealt with respectfully and sensitively, but also celebrate it, because that's what happened. And Lali and Gita had that incredible time, and not only in the camp, but were able to survive the camp and then spend the rest of their days together. And so it's, I think, quite a profound love that they both had.
Absolutely. Given your Jewish identity and your family, your experience, were there ever moments on set that were just on a personal level really tough, where perhaps you spoke to fellow castmates or just were dealing with things on your own on a personal level? Did you have those moments?
Yeah, probably quite repeatedly. I think I sort of alluded to it before, but I wanted so much to do this story justice and play my part and serve this story and honor Lali by doing the best job that I could do. And by bringing this focus and resilience and professionalism. But I think going into it, I was probably slightly naive that I was going to be able to create any kind of distance between myself and the story I was telling. It was so impactful showing up to that set, particularly the camp set every day, when it's been so kind of meticulously recreated and so well researched. And every step of the process, I was surprised by how poignant it felt, even having my head shaved, which I thought could be an innocuous part of it that would just be, the least of my worries. But actually, again, seeing yourself like that, knowing the association, putting the prisoner uniform on for the first time, it resonates differently. I took a picture and shared it with my mum, and it's very, very affecting. No matter how much you tell yourself, we are so privileged and so lucky to have this distance and to be reflecting on this time and to be telling a story in this medium. But it was very upsetting along the way. And I suppose it was inevitably going to be.
I can imagine. And I would also think that it would, if anything, feed everything else that you had done in preparation for this role. As an actor, you often draw on personal experiences, and I'm sure you try and search for those things that you have in common with the character. So I feel that only enhanced or contributed to the performance that you were able to give, even though I know it came at a cost for you personally, I'm sure.
It did, but I think what I found was that, as you say, so often my approach, it does involve my own lived experience and how I can relate it to the character that I'm playing, no matter how different they might seem. You can generally find connections and find a relation to them and what they're going through. And in this context, it does start to burst at the seams a bit, because the depths of the empathy that you need to try and imagine what it would be like to go through something like this is really a stretch. And so you're really pushing yourself. And so I think that's what filled me with the most apprehension, actually, is how can I portray this honestly? And there were times, particularly beforehand, but also during, where that felt almost overwhelming. But a wonderful piece of advice that Heather Morris, the author, gave me was trying, whilst subconsciously and inherently I was going to be bringing a lot of my own past and history to this. She said, on some level, let your own knowledge and experience of this time go and start to get to know the man before the war and understand who he was before he went through this. Because if you can get to know him and who he was as a 25, 26-year-old guy who I can relate to and understand some of his passions and aspirations and, you know, his need, you know, the fact that he wanted to fall in love and move to Paris and all of these things, if I can get to know him, then I can start to try and place him within the context and within the story.
What would you like people to walk away from after seeing this film, after seeing this miniseries?
I think ultimately, I hope they really respond to Lali and Gita and their love for one another and their commitment to each other, and the fact that so often they were being put in these impossible situations and being given these terrible decisions to make. And wherever they could, they were always searching for humanity. I think that for anyone with any connection to this time in history, they'll know what a specific and particularly painful history it is. And so I hope that it resonates with them. And beyond that, I hope it resonates with everyone, because I think there are universal themes in there, and it advocates for love and humanity and for peace.
Jonah Hauer-King, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful chance to speak to you a bit and hear more about this limited series. The Tattooist of Auschwitz debuts on Peacock on May the 2nd, starring Jonah Hauer-King, Harvey Keitel, Melanie Linsky. And it is a wonderful cast and truly an important series to view. Jonah, thank you so very much.